Kyle Duford is the Executive Creative Director at The Brand Leader, an agency specializing in crafting outstanding experiences for global brands. He's also a former magazine editor and has spent a bunch of his career with a focus on fashion, outdoor, and sports industries in the e-commerce and digital space. He's worked with brands such as Nike, Dr. Martens, Keen, Lululemon, and Powerbar, just to name a few. He's got his finger on the pulse in what's trending in e-commerce and marketing in general, and has spoken at some amazing events such as the Adobe Summit, Shop Talk, Retail West, and E-Tail Europe. This guy clearly knows his stuff. So let's jump into my conversation with Kyle Duford from The Brand Leader. Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast, where I, Selena Knight, share strategies, interview retail revolutionaries, and delve into the minds of e-commerce experts to help you grow a profitable, independent retail or e-commerce business. If you're stuck in a rut, or if you feel like business is way harder than it should be, or you've overachieved all of the things that you've set out to and are wondering what to do next, or how do I even make this better? I know that you're going to love today's episode. If you're stuck in a rut, feel like business is way harder than it should be, or you've achieved all of the things that you set out to and are wondering what next, or how do I even make this better, then I know that you're going to love today's episode. So Kyle, when you sent me through these emails, these tips on what I can talk to you about, which you were very gracious to do at the last minute, you said that you were an Enneagram 3, which out of all the things you sent, that was the first thing I attached to, because I just told you then we're going to geek out on something or other. I love behavioral neuroscience, all that kind of stuff. I'd love to think I'm a bit of a pop psychologist, and I've done so much research on this. I'm totally not qualified at all. And I thought, I remember my speaking coach saying to me, you need to do the Enneagram test. I don't know if you know Mike Pacquiao. He hangs out with like Donald Miller. Anyway, you need to do the Enneagram test. I think you're a 3 or an 8. And I was like, I haven't. That's like the one I haven't done. So I had to jump in and do it. But I know what mine is. And when I saw 3, I was like, that was the one that I thought he might think I was. And I never really looked up 3 because I'm an 8. And so when you said you were a 3, I was like, I have to go and do some research on what a 3 is. And why did Mike think that I could be a 3? And so I'm just going to quickly read out what 3s are. 3s are self-assured, attractive and charming, ambitious, competent, and energetic. And they can also be status conscious and highly driven for advancement. They're diplomatic and poised, but can be overly concerned with their image and what others think of them. Their typical problems are workaholism and competitiveness. And as soon as I saw that, I worked out what the difference is between the 3 and the 8. I am not attractive, charming, or poised. I am just the brash, go out there, get it done. So you're like the sparkled up version of an 8.
Well, gosh, first of all, every time someone reads a 3 out loud about me, I just cringe. Everyone says they have some disdain for their number to some degree. And I always say that, listen, I'm a Leo. I was born into the fire sign. I was born in the year of the tiger, and I'm a 3. So basically I was born an asshole. So my whole life I've been trying to mitigate that damage that I can leave in my wake. I don't know. It's for me, being a 3 is it's actually taken quite a bit for me to kind of appropriate myself to that and understand that there's, with the Enneagram there, and I'm no expert either, but there's different scales, right? As of anything, you can be healthy or you can be unhealthy. And an unhealthy 3 is really all those things that I thought that I probably was as I was younger. And as you get into more health, and gosh, I'm still growing and still learning a lot in this life, but as you get older and more mature, and as you understand why you do certain things, I think you can actually hold on to those good qualities and actually be effective. And so I'm trying to learn how to do that now. But my wife is an 8, so that's really interesting because she's also quite powerful, quite strong, but she doesn't need to be. She doesn't need to be a leader. She's quite happy taking a back seat where I feel compelled to, even if I don't have the right to, if that makes sense.
You say that you don't necessarily align with the 3 right from the beginning, but yet you've turned up, if you're watching the video, you've turned up just after having a run with the lovely coiffed hair. You're looking very fresh and energetic. I, on the other hand, had to slap on some makeup because it's 7:30 in the morning.
Well,
I'm very much a done is better than perfect. I feel like you might be up towards the perfect rather than done.
well, gosh, I mean, you're embarrassing me now. I took my daughter to a run club, and while she's there, because it's late here on the East Coast in the U.S., and while she's there, I go for a run myself, and this is the first hot day of the year, and so it's 85 Fahrenheit here, and I'm just sweating, and I ran home to make sure I didn't miss this, and so I quickly showered, I quickly threw on a different shirt, but I did pour myself a beer. So, but I would like to say, if we would have done this 5 years ago, I would have not run. I would have not rushed home. I would have made sure I was perfectly coiffed and given you the illusion I was put together, rather than now hoping that I am and just going about my business. And I think there's quite a difference there.
And why do you think that is? What's happened in the last 5 years to make you kind of be the illusion of perfectly put together, as opposed to just perfectly put together and, and just being okay with it?
Man, life, and my AirPods keep falling out of my ear. I apologize. Yeah, I went through kind of a midlife crisis, although I wasn't at midlife yet. And I was, trying to figure out what was missing in my life. And there was a lot of things that happened, and I happened to get divorced at a point where I also lost my job, and lots of different things were up in the air. And at the same time, I was kind of very humbled to look at myself and look at my relationship with God, and my relationship with my friends and my family, my children especially, and just realize that I wasn't living a life that I was proud of. And I was living a life, and talking about the Enneagram, I was living a life of perception rather than appropriation. And so I was so deathly afraid from the time I was very young that people would dislike me for some reason, or dislike what I said or what I did, or wouldn't accept me, that I kind of created this mask in front of me that was a protection mechanism, which lots of threes do. And then you could say, like, oh, I met that guy, I don't like him. And I could say, oh, well, that's okay. You didn't like the mask. You don't hurt me at all. And if you do like me, it wasn't, because it was equally as hard to be liked, because I felt like there was nothing worth there. So if you did like me, you were still liking the mask because of what you saw, and you still weren't hurting me. So unfortunately, as you get older, and this was my particular wound, as you get older, you forget what the mask is and who you are. And I just had this collapse of introspection, and I couldn't tell it sounds weird, but my own thoughts versus who I really was. And it took me losing everything to find everything. And so that was kind of my epiphanal moment. And that was, 3 or so years ago. And it coincidentally matched, and I have to say this because my life depends on it, coincidentally matched with me finding my wife again, who I was engaged to when she was 19 and I was 21 years old, 21 years prior. And we hadn't spoken a word. It's a long story I won't bore your listeners with, but in the pre-internet age, pre-cell phone, pre-texting, she went back home for the summer, and we were transient college students, and we just lost each other. We just lost touch. And we were supposed to get married that fall, and we didn't. And her family is from a well-known family, and so her phone number was unlisted. And we literally just lost touch. And I went through some depression and ended up marrying somebody else, and she married somebody else. We didn't speak one word for 21 years. Wow. And right at the bottom, right at the trough of my my depression, I saw her on TV, and lifted me out of it a little bit. And I wrote her and I said, I don't know if you remember me, but what you just said on TV was remarkable. And she was like taken aback. She's like, not remember you?
I was going to say, how does someone not remember the person they were going to marry?
she gives me crap about that all the time. But she was like, listen, I've been looking for you for 20 years. And we rekindled where we were. And now we have this amazing life, and with a blended family. And I credit a lot of my personal growth to what she's shown me. She's shown me how to love somebody who doesn't feel lovable, and in that understand who you are and be okay with that. So that's enabled me to have really just a better relationship with my colleagues, with my clients, with my family, with my children, and ultimately with my God and everyone else. So it's been really interesting.
Wow. Tell me about that whole, I'm just scrolling down on the Enneagram thing, and it's the key motivations: want to be affirmed, to distinguish yourself from others, to have attention, to be admired, and to impress others. Tell me, all of that rings true for you. Tell me, how did that show up in your work? Because you you've worked for some amazing companies, Doc Martens, Nike, Spec, like there are so many big brands that you have done amazing things for, like doubled, tripled their e-commerce sales.
Yeah.
Do you think that mask, that we'll call it, do you think that mask drove you to be something different, drove you to get those kinds of results?
Oh, absolutely. I think when you don't want to look at yourself and believe that there's something inside, and I don't want to make this a sob story, right? Like I had a decent life, and there was nothing really bad about it inherently, but I don't think I was happy, and that was a big part of it. So I filled that void with well, if I could just do something, if I could just show people that I'm worth something. And that for me manifested in first trying to find what my career was, and then I happened to fall into the sweet spot of kind of design, sales, e-commerce, branding, and I didn't want to go into that when I was going to college or when I was younger. It just kind of fell into this world of e-commerce and digital marketing and so forth. And so I found that I could do something there that people wouldn't know. And I don't know if I've ever articulated it this way before, but people wouldn't know if I was good or bad at it because it didn't exist prior to this time period. Like there was no college degree for e-commerce.
I know, we say that all the time. We say,
right?
what did you want to be when you grew up? I'm doing something that didn't exist when I grew up, when I was a kid. What I'm doing right now, it wasn't a thing.
Exactly. Which is kind of cool because you're the first to the brick wall, but those always get the most bloody. And for me, wearing that mask of kind of put it perfection and we have it all together enabled me to go through brick wall after brick wall after brick wall and not care about the results. And because I was able to say, now they happen to be good, but I was able to spin them in a way that, and this is the unhealthy three, where you could say, yes, but I am right because blah, blah, blah. And if you talk enough about numbers or whatever, people just go, okay, you know what you're talking about. And I don't want to say that my career was a fraud or a farce in any way. It wasn't, but I think the accolades and the accomplishment were probably far deeper for my team and for the people around me that unfortunately I may have stolen the spotlight from a lot of people. Now, definitely they taught me things and hopefully I taught them things, but it was easy for me to slip into that. I'm welcome and I'm wanted because your numbers keep growing and that's why you want me around. And so while it's equally affirming to somebody who needs that kind of
constant
closeness.
reassurance.
Yeah, that's the word. It's also equally detrimental because slowly it was chipping away at my true self. And then you start really questioning, well, do they only really want me for that, what I can bring to them? It almost kind of negatively reaffirms what you're afraid of. And so that's what happened to me. As I got more successful, I got more wounded. And it was really difficult to understand the difference.
I mean, clearly the results speak for themselves. You are clearly what you are good at. So kudos to you, and please own that. You either can build an amazing team who gets results and lead them, or you yourself, not knowing you personally, or you yourself are awesome at what you do. So, my advice would be accept the fact that you're really good at this stuff, however that works, whether it's the great team or whether it's you inherently, and just leverage it, which it sounds like you've kind of gotten to that point in your life that you're doing.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you saying that because part of this, I'm going to be 47 in a few months, and I don't necessarily think I'm very old, but I'm also not young anymore. And I think part of where I'm in my life right now, I've got children that range from 7 to 20, and I see myself in them, and I see myself as a 20-year-old and as a 7-year-old, and I've made mistakes with all of them. But I look at my 19 and 20-year-olds and I go, okay, I have a chance now of helping. One of them is a 3. And it's amazing because she is so much like myself. And so when my wife has trouble with her and I say, well, do you understand how she's feeling? This is what she's thinking. She just needs to be affirmed. She needs to be told she's loved, even though you're right. She doesn't care if she's right or wrong. She just wants to know you're not going to leave. And so it's really interesting because I can then go to that daughter and say, here's what your mother was saying. And here's how, in a calm way, I can understand that. Right. So I appreciate you saying that because my wife in many ways has done that to me. And my business partner is amazing. And he's taught me so much. I'm just now realizing it's okay to say, I did that. And gosh, that felt good. If it's true and honest, and we came to that respectively, or respectably, then I think it's okay to say, yeah, you know what? I worked my ass off for that and we did it. And so I'm just now coming back. So I really appreciate you saying that, because that does mean a lot.
Oh, no problems. Do you see this in other business owners or other team members? And obviously everybody is different, and we're not necessarily here to talk about Enneagrams. I just find it quite fascinating. And I think that whole behavioral science and just even having a minor understanding of it, like you obviously have quite a deep understanding of it, allows you to understand how other people think and react.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes their actions are not based on what's happening. It's based on these inherent needs or these inherent fears, and being able to just step back and say, I understand that this is what you need. So I'm just going to swap out a bit of my behavior to facilitate that, to make you feel reassured or to make you feel comforted, so that we can move on from here.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you just nailed it on the head. I'm not an expert. I find it fascinating, like yourself. But one of the things we did at the office was, as I got in, my niece is really into the Enneagram. One of my daughters is really into it. My brother-in-law, my wife. So we kind of know it. And it came about. It's very popular in Christian circles right now. And it's very trendy on Instagram to know what your Enneagram is, to put posts up with you're healthy or not. And it's all this it's all kind of fluff. But if you boil it down to who you are, you're absolutely right. You have to understand the other person's point of view and where they're coming from. There's many tests that help you do this. And sometimes just getting to know someone does that as well. But at the office, we've made everyone take the test, and we've plotted all 16 of us around the Enneagram chart. And so you can actually see who's like other people. And probably one of the best days of my life, and most certainly at the office, we all sat around our large conference room, and I brought this paper called the Enneagram at Work. And it was a white paper. Mm-hmm. And I made the number one read the paragraph on the number one at work. And I made the number two read the two. And we went through everybody. And I hadn't read it earlier, and they hadn't read it earlier. So it was a cold read. Every single person wept.
Oh, I did that too.
It was amazing.
I remember getting my first Myers-Briggs test at...
Oh, what are you? Tell me.
Specialist.
Oh,
is that Myers-Briggs? No. This was like when I was 19. I was working for the government, and they brought in, they had money. So they were just trying to find things to spend it on. And so all of the team leaders got these tests. And in the other one, I'm an ENFJ. I know all of them, but I couldn't tell you, but I'm a specialist in Myers-Briggs. And I think connector is the next one. And I remember reading it, bawling my eyes out, because of course you tend to focus on the bad things, not the great things.
Exactly.
And going, has somebody been stalking me? Like I'd never heard of, NLP or behavioral science, all that kind of, behavioral profiles. Had never heard of any of that. And I was so disappointed, because I thought I was a really good connector. I'm one of those people who knows lots of people. But actually, now that I'm a little bit older, I'm a good connector. I'm not an awesome connector. Like I know awesome connectors, and I can see now what they would be. But I am a specialist. I'm usually good at something, and I'm become really good at it. And so I remember getting that and being in this room. I was the only woman being in this room of men, and just tears streaming down my face going, is this really me? So what did you do? How did you take the negativity stuff out? Because, like I said, that's what we focus on, and actually spin it around. Yeah. So these are your strengths, and this is what we need to leverage.
Well, it was really interesting. And then it's really a great way you asked that question. So the one is a perfectionist, right? And in very general terms, we'll just speak very general terms. We're not all right. So there was, I believe we had one female who was a one at the time, and she used to drive me nuts because she'd never turn things in on time. She always wanted an extra day, and it was always like, everything was late, but when she turned it in, she would second guess it. She turned it in, pull it back. And I run a branding agency, so we've got clients, we've got a review process, and sometimes you just need to get the stuff out the door.
Oh yeah, we know all about that.
She read this aloud, and I'm sure everyone else had a similar reaction, but I particularly was hit hard, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to check in with her and see how she's doing. I need to buffer more time for her, and I need to assure her that what she's turned in is great. It's perfect when it is. Yep. And not have her, she was having this inner turmoil about, oh my gosh, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. They're not, and I can relate to that on some degree on the value scale. So we all looking at her going, oh my gosh, it just clicked and it made sense. Our creative director is a 2, and 2s are helpers. And so they will do anything for anyone because they want to show you love. They want to help you. It's the most mistyped personal one because everyone wants to be a 2. Everyone wants to see themselves as a helper. And so we've got a few of them. We've got 2 of them, the CEO and our creative director. And Chris, our creative director, and he wouldn't mind me saying this because we've talked about it publicly and with the team. And he's a wonderful guy. But if you're not careful and if you're selfish with him and ask him to do something, no matter how heavy his burden is, he'll say yes.
He'll say yes.
And so I looked at everyone, I'm like, I said, what is the one thing we can do for you? And Chris looked around and he's like, can someone just check in on me once in a while and just ask me how I'm doing? And I was like, I might cry right now because it was such a poignant moment. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, how could I have missed this? We kept going to him for help for us and no one checked in on him. And so every day he's like, well, what can we do? He's like, when you guys just walk by my office, can you just say hi? And it was like, gosh, oh my, this is this guy, he's older and he's like in his 30s and like this poor guy, all he wanted was just someone to say hi to him. And we're all good friends. It's not that, it was just, that's what he needed. And
it sounds like he's the bearer of burdens by his own choice. So you would naturally, I haven't met him, but I feel like he's the kind of person that you would naturally just go and have a conversation with when you're trying to get something out of your brain, but he takes it on personally.
Mm-hmm. And he helped as a creative director, he helps you unpack your potential and helps draw something out and goes, okay, well, this copy can go with this image and here's where I can tell the story. And I love working with him because we work so well together. But anyway, we could go all down the list, what the 1 through the 9s. And it was that kind of deal. And so we all sat there, tears streaming down our face. It was our account director's first day and she's crying and, I'm crying. We're all just bawling and we're all, these, 20, 30, 40 somethings just, and we're a really close knit team. And we didn't have to suppress the negative as you asked the question, but all we did was we just sat in our own understanding of one another for a minute and just went, I kind of understand, looking across the room and looking at your partner or looking at whoever you work with and going, I think I just understand you just a little bit more. And I've understood how I can change a little bit. So when we have a conversation or gosh, even a disagreement, I can see your side a little bit better. And it was such a moving moment. And it was really cool. And actually that accounts director, she looked up and she said, it was her first day. And she said, can I say something? Like, absolutely. She said, I've never seen a team that cares about each other so much that you would actually be willing to do this. And it's that kind of, so it's really showed me a lot that it doesn't matter what test you take or what numbers, but if you take the time to speak to somebody, understand what makes them tick and how they see the world, your relationship can just deepen so much better. And that's been really, really fun for us.
Has that brought on a lot of growth for your business now that people can just interact that little bit better? And it doesn't have to be monumental, like you said. Sometimes it's just that tiny little bit, that tiny little incremental piece that changes everything. Now that, it sounds like you're a close-knit team anyway. Now that you have this little bit of insight, have you seen a lot of growth out of it?
We've seen starting to trickle into the business, outwardly, and the business we have. But what it has done, maybe as a precursor to hopefully that monumental growth, which we're looking for, is it enabled people to jockey for their own position in a good, healthy way. We're able to realize that, hey, you know what? So-and-so isn't good at that. He's really, or she's really good at this, or their heart's really in this. They were struggling trying to do this job because they were looking at it the way I wanted them to look at it, or so-and-so wanted to look at it. They were struggling, hitting their head against the wall because they just couldn't see it that way. I'll give you a perfect example. My brother-in-law, my wife's brother, he works for us and he's our head of development. So he's on the leadership team, one of my favorite people on the planet. He's fantastic, but he's a 9. So he's Switzerland. He doesn't want to get involved. He can
he's
see
neutral
both
territory.
He doesn't take anything seriously. That's probably more him than a 9, but he's just neutral. If 2 people are fighting, he's like, hey man, I love you. And he's like, hey, I love you. And let's all just go get a beer. And it's infuriating because he'll never pick a side. He'll never, but one of the things I was really frustrated with was we were trying to saddle him with a role that he didn't want to be in charge of. And it was very heavy on reviewing and personal growth. And him being a 9, he really felt awkward and uneasy having hard conversations because he could see it from their point of view.
Yeah.
And so I was given the permission by our CEO, like, hey, just take that burden off of him. Like, why did we hire him? To be great at development, to train future leaders, to be client facing. I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, then why are you having him do process and, reviews and, and that kind of stuff? That's not in his wheelhouse. He's getting frustrated. And so we could go down to the whole team and say what we did, and just seeing it from their point of view and going, let's get you either in a different role or just a slightly skewed one. And everything just started clicking. And some people moved into different roles, into bigger roles. Some people slid over from this to that. One guy who's fantastic, his name's Zach, one of the best digital designers I've ever met. When I first met him, he was a little younger and a little wet behind the ears, a lot of ambition, but just wanted to take everything all the time. And we were just like kind of, tempering him a little bit and say, hey, it's just not your time. But he's a 5. So he's like a dog with a Frisbee. He just wants to go out and prove you like he can do it all the time. I think he's a 5, maybe a 6. Like, don't quote me on that. And so when I finally said, man, what do you want to do? He's like, oh, what I want to do is this. I'm like, show me what you can do. And he moved over from being a general designer to now being our senior digital art director and in charge of all of UX and UI. And he has blown away people. And he's actually won some awards now for websites he's worked on, because he just had the guts to say, that's not me. This is me. This is how I want to showcase my talent. And that's what's been really happening. And so it's just been such a fun experiment, but not really an experiment, but just really an exercise in us challenging one another. And it's just been a really, really good team.
That question that you just talked about, what do you really want to do? Mm-hmm. I've had that conversation with every person I've ever worked for, because sometimes you hire somebody for a role, like you just said, and then they get in and they're okay at it. But you know that they've got a superpower, you just haven't unleashed it yet. Mm-hmm. And so when I find that happening, it's the question I say, if you could do anything in this organization, what would it be? And they go, oh, generally they start off with something that's in their role. And I'm like, no, anything. Like if you just had the choice of any job in this whole business, what would it be? And the truth is often like, wow, like let's just try you out on that and see what happens. Because when someone truly embraces the thing that lights them up, then I'll just skip back. My big philosophy is do what you're crap at in your business, or get your business to address the thing that it's crap at for 90 days and you'll see growth, rather than doing the thing that you're good at. Now, it kind of flips when it's your people, because you need people who are awesome at what they do to be able to do those tasks. So as the business owner, you have to make this leadership decision, which is, we're not great at our processes, or we're not great at sales. Like we haven't got anything in the funnel. Like we're going to need to focus on that rather than focusing on getting some more awards because they're fun and they look good.
Right.
But when it comes to people, I really think if you can find that person's superpower and harness it, then they can make huge leaps and bounds to your organization. And it sounds like you've from doing that Enneagram test, you've kind of grabbed onto that as well and moved people around to actually make the business flow better.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because it's a lot of different pieces at the same time, kind of really focusing in. It's kind of like taking a magnifying glass to the sun and just really focusing that. And so we try to do that with individuals. But look, it's at the end of the day, I think and I will own this myself, is that I don't want to be known for a great brand, to be a great brander, or I don't want to be known as the guy who doubled, tripled, quadrupled the brand leader, or, Keen Footwear or Dr. Martens on e-commerce, whatever it is. Like, I want to be known for growing people and leaders into being great people and great leaders. And that took me a while to understand, because that's my superpower. And so I can fudge my way through other things, and I can do a decent job at some very, splintered off pieces of e-commerce and so forth. And it's starting to pass me by a little bit now as it's kind of hurtling its way, into the future. But one thing that is tried and true is understanding people and growing them as individuals and collectively as a group. And I tell people, listen, if this is not the place for you, I will help you get the best job you can imagine.
I've done the same thing. Yeah.
It's like, let's just make sure you're in the right place. Now, knock wood, we've had only one person leave, and they went for a bigger role that we just couldn't offer them. And So in my 2 years here, and I'm going to retire here, we've had people only just come in and grow, and they've grown the business. And so we have been focusing on what makes people tick and what we don't do well simultaneously.
Yeah.
But through it all, we've been trying to grow the people's skills. And today I walked out and just spur of the moment, and we're going through a leadership meeting, and we're just going through some of the things we're doing. We're launching 7 major launches of websites in the next 5 weeks. And I'm looking at this going, could you guys have imagined doing this last year or 2 years ago? And they're all on time or ahead of schedule or under budget, whatever it is. And so I just walked out to what they call the pit. It's the studio where most of the designers and developers are. It's big, very big room. And I just asked everyone's attention. Everyone's in today. And I just said, can I just celebrate you guys for a second? And we just looked at everyone and said, this is where you were last year. And this is where you were last year. And you just did this, and you just learned how to do it. And now you're teaching us, and you're in this new role. And it was just we have a project manager come up with really great names for a pool of names we're presenting to an international client. And she's just I have a passion for this client. Can I help you? And her names are better than some of the strategists and names. So it's just really awesome when you get to do that. And so I found also celebrating, we have a thing that we say, we own our wins and we own our losses. We have to own all of that to be healthy. And so they've done a really good job at owning their losses, if we have any. And it's my job to help celebrate their wins. And I've been lucky enough to see that.
This kind of ties all the way back to that conversation that we had about 20 minutes ago, where I said, whether it was either because you amassed great people around you and led them really well, or you were awesome at what you did manage to triple e-commerce sales for Doc Martens and build these brands up to be from those legacy brands that they were to hip upcoming digital brands that are on target with their customers. And so now that I'm starting to think that maybe it was the leadership part maybe you were able to just bring the right people and lead the right people to get
I think
the
so.
results.
I think so.
That's your
Dr.
superpower.
Martens, I started, well, thank you. I started off as the US VP of e-commerce and digital. And there was one person in the entire organization. There's one person above me globally who I took her role a year later. But there's one person below me, and she was an assistant to the e-commerce manager or something. And the e-commerce manager is no longer there. So I come in as VP, and she's this assistant. And I looked at her and I said, kind of like what you're asking. I said, what do you want to do? And she's like, well, I want to do what you're doing one day. And I said, okay, I promise you will be. She was making $24,000 US. So not much. She had been there for 2 or 3 years. And I'll tell you, she had more drive than anybody. And she was managing the catalog and the merchandising and the helping out with the digital marketing. There was I'm saying one person helping, because everything was run from a US website at the time. There was nothing else. And within 3 years, she moved up to e-commerce manager and then e-commerce director. And then when I moved on to the global role, she became the vice president of e-commerce for the US. In 3 years, she went from 24,000 to probably 160. She came to me one day, and sadly, she lost her sister in the middle, which was very sad. But apart from that tragedy, she said, because of your trust in me, my husband was able to go to nursing school. Oh, sorry, it was her fiance. He went to nursing school and graduated, didn't have to take out loans. They bought their first house. She paid off their loans. She was able to fly back and forth and see her sister, who couldn't fly, in South America. And they got married and paid for it themselves. And she said, I never would have been able to do that had you not had faith in me. And I take that as put that on my epitaph. That I think if I can help somebody achieve their best, then man, that's just put me to bed. I'm happy with that. Unfortunately, during that time period, I was also taking many accolades on myself, saying, yeah, but look at what I did, and strip that bullshit away. And you can see, hopefully I left a little bit of a legacy with the people that I led. And that's just really what it's about. And unfortunately, it took me 44 years to figure that out, but hopefully we'll do something with the back half of my life.
I would love to just dig into that a little bit more. We just did with my creative director last week, we redid all of our brand strategy. And I said to her, I want you to take me through the brand strategy session as if I was a brand new client. Pretend you don't know me. We've known each other for over a decade. Ask me the hard questions. Don't pretend that you know the answers, even though you think you do. I won't pretend I know the answers. Just ask me the questions. And it was so, I was buzzing afterwards. I was so excited about where the brand was heading. And like you, we'd hit so many goals, but not necessarily celebrated them. And when she was asking me these questions, I said to her, I have to redo all the goals for this business because we've hit so many of them, and they weren't necessarily huge goals. And most of them weren't monetary based. They were affect a place, like affect, how we affect other people. It's like, we have to think bigger. Like, oh my God, we have been playing small. We've just been working on this little thing. We have to be bigger than what we are right now. So it was so great to do that. But I wanted to, the point of this story was we love brand archetypes. And so we looked at who my brand archetype is, and then who we attract. So my main brand archetype is a hero. I love to push people to do their best. I'm, always behind them. I give them the systems that they need to hit that goal that they've been trying to get, actually to go past that goal. Let's #overachiever. But I always say I'm never a coach, because I would be a crap coach, because in that coaching sphere, and I'm not talking about sports coaching, but in that whole coaching sphere, coaches are never supposed to take sides. So coaches are never supposed to give you the answers. They're supposed to help you find the answers yourself, which is actually at odds with what I know about sport, which is not an awful lot, where the coach is the strategist. The coach is the one that is mapping out the game, telling people where to go. And so I've always called myself a strategist, because I just tell people the answers. Like, we work through it, and it's like, well, this is the obvious next step. Give it a try. And funnily enough, when they do it, it makes sense. But what we've worked out is I attract caregiver archetypes. And this is the reason I'm getting to the question that I'm going to ask you.
I love this.
The people that I work with, and I'm talking anything from someone who's turning over $100,000 to brands that are turning over $5, $7, $10 million. Okay. They all started their business for a reason. They all are the kinds of people who feel like they have to put extra in an order just because someone bought from them. Like, they've got to put the extra gift. They've got to give a discount. Like, they have to show their customers that they care about them. And quite often they hire people because they like them rather than because they're awesome at something. And then they can't let them go, because when they start working with me, I'm like, okay, so what are the KPIs for this person? Like, it doesn't look like they're making you any money. We need to, put some KPIs in place. Right. And they often get to the point where that's very uncomfortable, because money is a very uncomfortable place for them, because what they did is not about the money, even though they say it is. But when it comes down to it, it's not about the money. It's about making a change in the world, making their customers feel better. And so they quite often get to this place where, when they have to get the big stick out and say, you have to perform, they really, really struggle with that. And so my question to you was going to be, you clearly had this girl that was an overachiever who could do all the things.
Sure.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to the people who are probably in that caregiver role, who want to help everybody, who struggle to make those hard decisions when it's going to emotionally affect somebody, but they need to do it to step up as a CEO? They need to actually be in charge of their business. So what's your advice to someone who's listening going, oh my goodness, that's me?
Yeah, I mean, great questions. And that is the sad part, the hard part about running a business, owning a business, starting a business, whatever it might be, because they are people. And we just got done talking for almost an hour about how much we care about people and how much people make it worth it. And so we haven't talked about the kind of the downside, which is sometimes you have to have hard conversations.
Yeah.
And they don't always work out well. I mentioned Zach, who's now our digital art director. I don't think he would mind me saying this publicly, but he came during a review session and was really upset, because he was upset the creative director had said some things in his review and he didn't agree with it. And he's just kind of stomping around. And so I called him into my office. Three of us sat down, we started talking, and he just wouldn't have it. And I'm just like, let me ask you a question. How would you gauge yourself? Would you say you're a 10 on this? Would you say you're a 10 on that? Like, be honest with yourself, because I don't hear any honest criticism about who you are. And so it's hard for me to do that, or for your boss to do that, if you can't do that. So what would you want? What, if you were me, what would you say? And it kind of spun the conversation. Like, instead of from a place of defense, he was like, oh, he had to think about it. And, you know, we still had a little bit of tension, and I looked at him and I said, we were giving him a little bit of a raise, and he wasn't happy with it. And I said, listen, let me just tell you something, and then this conversation is over. When someone offers you an effing raise, you effing take it, and you shut the F up. And I try not to curse the office. It's not who I am, but he looked at me and he walked out, and he came in Monday morning and he signed the paper and he apologized, and he said, he's to the creative director, and he said, that'll never happen again. Since then, I don't know if it was a humbling experience or what. I wasn't proud of myself during that moment, but since then, he's been promoted twice. He's got the raise he needed and more. And because he proved himself, because I think in that moment, somebody finally had probably the balls to say, no, you're not as good as you think you are. You will be. I mean, you might be. I think you will be in this lane or that lane, but you're not right now. And it's that tough love kind of thing. I'll tell you another story. When I was at Dr. Martin's, there was another gal we hired, fantastic person. We brought her in. Everybody loved her. She blew the doors off the place. I mean, we were like, oh my, I had girls running in going, I think she's going to be my new best friend. Like, we can't wait to do this. She's going to run this and she's going to run that. And she started, and like maybe 2 weeks in, I'm looking at myself going, what did we do? Like, she's not the person for this role. And then the team started figuring it out. And they're like, we love her, but she's not right. And she's not doing well. So I had to terminate her in 3 months from the when she started. And I told her, and I don't think she believed me, but I said, I will help you get a job that you will excel in. If you stayed here, I'm not helping you. If you stay here, it's not going to end well for either of us. And that's not fun for me. Like, I want you to do well. I really, truly do. If you stay here, you're not going to do well. And I don't know what it is. I don't know I can't remember the conversation exactly. And, you know, of course, she was very upset. Obviously she just moved, and she just, you know, bought a house, whatever it was. And it's hard conversations, and you try to help as much as you can. She came back to me about a month later and she said, hey, would you give me a recommendation? And I said, well, it depends what the job is. And if it's the same role, probably not. No. She's like, no, I think I found what I really want to do. And I looked at it. I said, I can see that. I think so. I'll absolutely give you a character reference. Talk to their boss. She got hired, and her career has taken off still in digital marketing, but in a completely different trajectory. I've lost track of where she is now. This was years ago, but I think it took someone to say, and I'm not saying look at me and how great I am. Please don't take it that way. But it's because I had the guts to have a hard conversation. And I'll tell you why. I've told people this, I've gotten fired from jobs more than I've been hired from jobs. And my daughter said, wait, how is that possible? And I said, well, I'm being facetious, just in case you were wondering. But the fact is, the ones that I excelled at was because I failed miserably, and I had a boss who believed in me to say, I'm gonna let you do something different now. Don't make the same mistake. I just lost my AirPod again. Don't make the same mistake, but let's try something different. And allowed me to fail, and allowed me to pick myself up, and allowed me to learn through that experience. Those hard conversations, someone telling you, no, man, you're not good at this. You keep thinking you are, but that's the definition of madness. You will run yourself into the ground if you continue to think you're going to do this. It's not good for you. It's definitely not good for me. And it's for sure not good for the business. So that's really the conversation. Now, every once in a while, you also have a complete dog who is stealing from the business and whatever, and just cut them loose, and, you know, don't feel bad about that. But for the most part, if there's a way you can understand where they are and see ourselves in those people, gosh, I mean, that's the magic. You know, it's a hard day. I come home emotionally exhausted sometimes, but it's because you're pouring yourself into folks. And I mean it. I can't think of somebody who I've worked with that I didn't like on some level, because you start seeing, you might not have a beer with them, you might not go to their wedding, but you can see how they see the world. It's the practical exercise of understanding people's Enneagram. It's just living with them and understanding what makes them tick. Yeah. When I was at Chrome Industries, had a fantastic job there, and I'll tell you his name. His name is Eddie. Love him to death. He wanted my job, and he was the, I don't know, what was it, e-commerce manager maybe. And I was on the leadership team and ran e-commerce there, and we tremendous success, tripled growth there in 18 months, and we had a wonderful time. The weekend I'm there, he comes to me and he goes, I'm going to be president one day. And I said, you're going to be president one day. I'm like, I don't even say that. And he's like, I'm going to show you, I know what I'm doing. And about a month later, I said, I said something like, okay, let's see, let's, I want you to be president. That'll be awesome. Maybe I can work for you one day. And about a month later, he comes back to me and goes, I'm so sorry. I had no idea what I didn't know. I didn't know that it was all about this. And now it's about, I thought it was about this. And I thought it was all about achievements and blah, blah, blah. He ended up meeting his wife there. She was our digital marketing manager. They got married. I hired her at Dr. Martens. I got him a job at Rafa Cycling out of the Portland office in the United States. They have a thriving career. She's still at Dr. Martens. He's doing great. And I'll tell you, this kid has excelled way past anything I could ever imagine. And I think I attract achievers. I attract people who want to kind of do that same kind of thing. But when you take the time and say, I'll let you fall on your face, I'll let you win, I'll let you have both wins and failures, but I'm going to push you to do your best. I mean, it's just, there's nothing like it in the world, because then it's like, not only does he thank me for introducing him to his wife, but he's like, you got her a job, you got our job. I'm like, no, you did that. I saw a need and I put you in that hole.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, I could talk about these people forever.
I remember when I had my stores, I would hold group interviews. So I had this, like, I didn't have time to be interviewing 100 people. So I would put people through a series of obstacles to see who I ended up with. It was like, use this, and we still do this today. Use this subject line in your email. Put this word somewhere in your whatever. So we get down to usually between 6 and 10, and we would have a group interview. And one of the questions, we don't do interviews like other people. One of the questions we would ask is, what do you want out of life? Like, what do you want? Like, what's going to make you happy? And I remember one girl saying to me, I just want to be able to buy my own home. And I was like, awesome. Like, that's totally achievable. She said, I've got a kid, and, my husband works. I can only work this was for a part-time role. I can only work part-time. I'm really not sure how that's going to happen. Anyway, she got the job. She was amazing. She got the job. And the day before she was supposed to start, she calls me in tears and she said, I have a problem. And I said, what's the problem? She said, I really, really want to work with you. Like, I want to work in your stores. I love your people. I love what you do. I love everything about it. You know that I've been a loyal customer. I said, well, what's the problem? She said, I just got a job that's offering me 50% more. I was like, take it. And she said, but you hired me. Like, no, I've got this obligation to come and work for you. I'm just at this, I'm torn. And I said, no. You told me at that interview that your thing that you wanted to achieve was to buy your own home. You're going to do that like 50% quicker if you go and work for them, because you're going to make another half as much. She's like, but that doesn't make sense. And it's only like an admin role, and I may not be happy. And I said, even if you only have to do it for a few years, you will be further ahead than if you come and work for me. And we'll be really sad. We think you're awesome, but I am not helping you achieve what you want to achieve if I let you take this job.
Good for you. I love that story.
I think it's making those really hard decisions that aren't, like, to me, that is that caregiver. It's like, I actually care about what you want to achieve, and I'm losing out in this process. But I've got 5 other people I can potentially choose from. But having that leadership role, and quite often when people have started their business, and I know it's a little bit different for you because you've moved into existing quite high profile businesses, but when you start up your own business, you do everything at the beginning. Like, you have to have your finger in every single pie because you have to learn it all. And I think at a certain point, people forget that they can't be doing everything. They have to step up. They have to be the leader. We call it the CEO, because in most of our businesses that we work with, there is no CEO. So we give them that title to say, you're not even the boss. You are the person who is the visionary. You're the person who is the leader, and you're the person who has to build out the strategy of how you're going, like, where do you want to go? Because the people underneath you can't get you there if you don't know where you want to go.
Yeah.
So how do you do that in your business? Because did you tell me that you're going to take over the whole business shortly?
Well, not shortly. Actually, no. At some point he's owned the business for 22 years, and it was a lifestyle business for him. And you do anything for 22 years and it's kind of like, and we had a great conversation. He came along at this amazing time in my life where I was looking for something for stability and to sink my teeth into. And we met over a cup of coffee or beer, I think maybe. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'd love to run my own agency. And he's like, well, do that. I said, well, I got to pay my mortgage. I don't have a blank check. I need to make money. And he said, well, what if I gave you a blank check? And I don't think I've ever told this story publicly. And I said, well, yeah, then I'd do it. He's like, well, I'm not giving you a blank check. I said, well, then I'm not starting one. Like, this is very simple. And he said, but you want to own an agency and I've
got an agency.
Yeah, I've got an agency and I want to retire at some point. What if we figured something out? And there's just weeks and weeks of trying to figure that out. But in the beginning of the conversation, what if we figure something out that you come in for a bit and I stay for a bit and we have a blast together? You bring your perspective to me, I teach you some things, and then we'll see what happens. And then maybe 5-10 years from now, we see what. I said, I'm in, let's do it. So
how could you say no to that? That's like,
oh, right. And by the way, he is like he's a 2, but he's also probably not even probably, he is the kindest, most caring, generous person I've ever met. And he cares about the business and the people just in a way that is so utterly different than me, but still equally as wonderful. It's just, he's a great guy. And I said, okay. So we started together and he came to me probably Christmas recently. So probably a year and a half in. And he says, can I ask you a question? I'm like, of course. He said, would it be okay if I stuck around a little bit longer? And I said, longer than what? He's like, well, longer than like 5 to 7 years, whatever. I said, gosh, of course.
It's your business.
It's your business. Yeah. Like as to be very clear, right now, I own 0. I work for him. And he said, I haven't had this much fun in 22 years. And I just want to see where we can take this thing. And I'm like, man, let's do it. But here's the secret to this. The secret was, he is really good at certain things. And he thought he was really good at other things.
Mm-hmm.
I am really good at certain things. And I thought I was really good at different things. That we are not mutually exclusive. You can't pull me out and plug him in. So what we've been able to do is, and this is just, it just happened. It wasn't planned. I started shying away from things I just don't like to do. I'm not very good at. And it's the back office stuff. It's the HR, it's the shaking babies and, shaking babies, kissing babies, shaking hands and kissing babies. Not shaking, does not shake babies.
No shaking babies.
Maybe you can cut that out. And so he's really good at that. And a lot of the businesses we've worked with are because of his relationships and people love this guy. I'm a little bit more strategic and visionary. And so I'm like, I want to go there. So let's plan. I always say plan the work the plan. So let's plan the way to get there, lay the track, get the train ready, get the coal in there, hire the people to stoke the engine, and let's just go. I'm like, what I need you to do, because I suck at it, is make sure we have the permits and the engineer and blah blah blah. Like, and he's like on it. I love it.
Oh, I'm the same as you. The follow-up, we call it the follow-up. The follow-up stuff, we're trying to hire somebody to do that now, because I'm the same. I'm like,
it's hard.
I can see the picture. I know how to get us there. I know the people we need.
Mm-hmm.
Just go and do all the things now.
Yeah. And so it's worked really, really well because, we work really well together. Now we used to butt heads like crazy. Like, it would frustrate us. Like, one time he was kicking his car. I said something, he got him so angry. And like, it really, really, like, I'd come home frustrated, and our wives know each other now. And so they just kind of like, they laugh because they know we love each other so much and we're just different. And something happened where we just went, I'm going to let go of my pride on these things. And I'm going to trust that you know what you're doing and honor that God's give you a gift that I don't have. And at the same time, he had a similar thing with me. It's like, and he's he's so kind. He's just, he will lift me up above him anytime. It's almost embarrassing how much he does. And he's like, I'm going to put you forward. I'm on this podcast because he wants me to be the face of the business rather than him. He's that generous with who he is. And it just clicked and it just works. And it is the most fun I've ever had in 26, 27 years of working in a career. And it just works. So I kind of forget your original question, but the idea of having that visionary and moving forward is really, it's about, you need to have all those pieces together, right? He's the CEO. I'm the executive creative director. But you could say we're kind of two best friends, just having the time of their life, flying by the seat of their pants with some sort of vision in mind, but with the best team on the same plane. It's just I don't know how I got here. I'm blessed.
Who gets the final say?
I think you do. You can end the pot. No,
No,
I'm kidding.
no,
I know
no,
what you
no.
mean.
Between,
No,
if
I know
there's
what
a,
you mean. I know what you
yeah.
mean. You know what? He always, no, I wouldn't say always. He defers to me 9 times out of 10. And it is a skill and a humility that I don't think I'll ever have in my life, to defer to somebody, even if you have such a strong opinion. He is so committed to what he promised that, and he also knows that I can deliver. And so I trust that he has my back, and he has my back every single time. I mean, there's not, and it's kind of one of those things where when my wife and I got married, she was telling me some horror stories of her first marriage as well. And one of the things she said is, just always have my back in public. I don't care if I'm wrong and disagree with me, just always have my back. Everyone should always see us strong.
That's
And
the
thankfully
8.
yeah, well,
We
exactly,
fear
right.
weakness.
Well, and she also, she respects loyalty, right?
Yep.
She just and she's a very big on justice. So when
Yep.
she's fighting for justice, if she doesn't know I'm in her corner, oh man, like that's gonna rub us wrong at home. Now thankfully, like, I agree with her sentiment and her her ideology through and through. But it is like, always in public, we have each other's back. I never have to wonder what he's thinking when I'm giving an impromptu speech to the crowd, or I never have to worry if I make a call about what we're charging somebody, or letting a client go, or sunsetting an account, whatever it is. I could be wrong. He will never he will never contradict me in front of the crowd. And if he has to talk to me silently, we will have a talk about it. And sadly, I've just come to this realization that he has so much wealth of knowledge that when he talks, and this is the sad part, what I mean, I just realized, he's not criticizing me, he's teaching me.
He's just
He's
teaching
not
you.
telling me,
Yeah.
he's not telling me I've done something wrong. He's telling me, man, I love you and I love the business, and I think we could do this a little bit better. I now need you to trust me. And that's what, about 6, 7, 8 months ago, that's what happened. And it just clicked. And I like to think our clients and our businesses see that in us. Like I mentioned, we're launching 7 massive websites in the next 5 weeks. And when they come out, I think they will see the skill behind it, but the promises we've made, the integrity behind what we do. We have 10 fundamental pillars of who we are, and I won't bore you with all of them, but they land around this: integrity, honesty, authenticity, humility, trust, compassion, responsibility, ownership. I almost am naming all 10, but it is just, if you can buy into what I'm selling with that, then we can do anything. And I believe that. And I had someone come up to me the other day and said, I know we're hitting our goal this year. We're a little off right now, but he said, I know we're hitting our goal this year because you said we will. And I'm like, if that's not blind trust. So again, I don't want to paint this thing like we've got the best thing in the world and it's just happening. But one thing I can tell you is, because he's left me with such responsibility, I'm able to understand the magnitude of that and tenor it with my own expectations. And somewhere in the middle, meet some grace and compassion, and still inject some vision and create something special. Now, man, I screw this up daily, by the way. That's a whole nother podcast. But if we get it, on the days we get it right, that's just when magic happens.
But that is the sign of true leadership, in my opinion, is you own when you stuff up, you own it when you're wrong. And a good leader who has good vision brings everybody along for the ride. You can see, if you can see it so clearly, they're on the train. They might not know, but they're just like, this sounds fantastic and we want to help you get there. Like, we want to be on that train when it gets to the destination and we want to be part of it. And I think that to me, that is the sign of a really good leader. And it sounds like you are one of those.
You're very, very kind, maybe too kind.
All right. So, we've been talking for about an hour now. So I am going to wrap it up and say, thank you so much. You have to give us a sneak peek. What are some of those websites that are going, like, we're now curious. You've got 7 of them going live. What do we need to check on in a few weeks' time to see some of the brand leaders' work?
I will tell you, you should definitely go to thebrandleader.com and see some of the amazing work from our amazing team. I do believe that our work is second to none when it comes to branding, strategy, and design. So definitely check that out. The one I would definitely tell you about, there's a sports nutrition company called Power Bar. We all know and love them. They're fantastic. The US ownership group of Power Bar is relaunching, and it will be at sport.powerbar.com probably by the end of May 2021. I tell you, it's some of the best work we've ever done. There's also another site, which it's brand new brand. It's called 259. I don't even know what the website, 259celsius.com, I believe is the deal. We've branded them. We've created this brand. It's a global consortium of storytelling and gear reviews and expedition kind of travel logs in the outdoor and sports endurance world, which we've created with our partner Echoes Communications out of Boulder, Colorado. So thrilled about that. And then we've got a couple of smaller ones, which I may or may not bore you with right now, but just check our website out. We'll always put this stuff up there, and it's fantastic.
I just have one last question.
Yeah,
Was the company called The Brand Leader before you came in?
Oh, well, that would be really pompous of me if I called it The Brand Leader after hearing what a jerk I was most of my life. No, I actually, you know what? I actually say, it's funny you mentioned it was called Showcase Marketing. And I don't want to take
That's a totally crap name.
But totally crap name. It was called that for 18 years or 17 years or something. And again, we had a lifestyle business. And so it was kind of like, we'll do anything for anybody. And it was local here to Greenville, South Carolina. We did a lot of regional work. It was a typical marketing agency, and they rebranded long before I showed up to The Brand Leader. And the one thing I have done is honed that even more and said, we're not going to do, we're not a Greenville, South Carolina company. We happen to be based here. We're an international branding agency that happens to have its roots in Greenville. And automatically we went from having, I don't know how this happened, we went from having local clients to having national and now international businesses. And I think it's just a perspective change. Yep. But one of the things I say a lot is I don't say we're not a brand leader, we are the brand leader. And it doesn't mean that we're the best at branding. What it means is that we will help you lead your brand into excellence. We're all about what we can do to help our businesses. So we're not saying we're the best, we're saying we can help make you the best. And that's the most important.
I love it. All right. Okay. Thebrandleader.com. Thank you so much. I feel like we could drink our non-alcoholic wine and beer and talk for a very, very long time. And if I'm ever in South Carolina, I will certainly hit you up. We can go to the bar and we can have a drink. But thank you so much for sharing. I've loved all of this story. We didn't quite know where it was going to go. We embraced the Enneagram and all the stories along the way. So thank you so much.
Those are the best ones. Thank you. This was absolute pleasure for me.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selinaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selinaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.